When Ms. Evelyn Harris entered the Corner Bistro, a well-known and beloved restaurant in her hometown, she anticipated a warm celebration for her birthday. Over the years, this restaurant had become a special place for her, a spot where she shared many meals with friends, family, and sometimes just by herself. But on this particular day, instead of a warm welcome, she was met with cold stares and an unexpected humiliation from a new waiter, who had no idea he was speaking to the mother of the restaurant's owner. As she stepped inside, Evelyn took in the familiar ambience, the soft hum of conversation, the clinking of silverware, and the smell of freshly prepared meals. She smiled to herself, feeling the comfort of this familiar environment. But her attention was soon drawn to a young man standing behind the counter. His frown and irritated demeanor caught her off guard. Brushing it off as fatigue from a long shift, Evelyn approached him with a gentle smile. "Hello, I reserved a table under my name. It's Evelyn Harris." The waiter glanced up, barely acknowledging her. His gaze held something unsettling, something that made Evelyn's stomach knot. With a dismissive tone, he muttered, "There are no tables available. They're all occupied." Confused, Evelyn's smile faded. "I called yesterday and confirmed my reservation. Could there have been a mistake?" The waiter sighed impatiently, clearly annoyed. "I said, there are no tables available. Maybe you should try somewhere else." Hurt by his cold response, Evelyn stood still for a moment. She had been a loyal customer for years and knew most of the staff by name. This treatment was unlike anything she had ever experienced here. And yet, there was something more beneath his dismissiveness. It wasn't just about a busy restaurant. His tone, his expression, they were all too familiar. She had seen that look many times in her life, a look that told her she wasn't welcome because of the color of her skin. Despite the unease rising within her, Evelyn tried to remain composed. "Are you sure there's no place? I could wait by the counter." The waiter crossed his arms, a smirk forming on his lips. "I've told you, there are no tables. This isn't up for discussion." By now, other patrons were beginning to notice the exchange, glancing her way. Evelyn felt her heart sink. She wasn't one to seek attention, especially in moments like this, but today was different. This wasn't just about her being a customer. She was the mother of James Harris, the restaurant's owner. And while she didn't want to wield her connection like a weapon, she also couldn't stand by and let this happen. "Perhaps you don't know who I am," she said calmly, hoping to diffuse the situation. The waiter's smirk widened. "I don't care who you are. There's no place for people like you here." The words hit her like a punch in the gut. Even in this day and age, even in her own son's restaurant, she was still subject to such blatant prejudice. Memories of the discrimination she'd faced throughout her life flashed through her mind, entering shops, offices, and schools only to be met with that same look. The fire that had long burned within her ignited once again. But Evelyn wasn't a young woman anymore. She had fought these battles for decades, and she was tired. Tired of having to prove her worth. Tired of the relentless fight for respect. And yet, something inside her told her that now wasn't the time to retreat. "Not here, not today." With a quiet but firm voice, Evelyn said, "I'd like to speak to the manager." The waiter's smugness faltered, replaced by uncertainty. He shot her a glance, likely assuming that her modest appearance made her words an empty threat. Nevertheless, he turned and disappeared behind the counter to summon his supervisor. As she waited, Evelyn could feel the eyes of the other diners on her. Conversations had quieted, and she noticed several people subtly filming the scene on their phones. She hadn't intended to make a spectacle, but in the age of social media, nothing went unnoticed. The murmurs began. Hashtags spread like wildfire, and before she knew it, her stand against discrimination was already making waves online. Moments later, the manager emerged from the back, clearly flustered. As soon as he saw her, his expression changed. He knew who she was, James's mother. "Mrs. Harris, I'm so sorry for this misunderstanding. Let me personally show you to a table," he offered, trying to diffuse the tension. Evelyn held his gaze. She could have allowed the manager to settle the matter quietly, but she knew that doing so wouldn't address the real issue. This wasn't about one rude waiter. It was about the deep-seated prejudice that still lingered, even in places she thought were safe. "You don't just owe me an apology," Evelyn said, her voice firm but composed. "You owe it to everyone who has been treated this way. This isn't just about today. It's about a bigger problem that needs to be addressed." The manager hesitated, clearly feeling the weight of the moment. The room had fallen silent, and he could sense the gravity of the situation. He knew that if he didn't act decisively, the backlash could be catastrophic. Meanwhile, James had already seen the video online and was rushing to the restaurant. His heart sank as he watched the footage of his mother being disrespected in the place he had worked so hard to build into a welcoming space for all. Bursting through the door, his face was a mask of calm fury. He walked straight up to the manager and the waiter, his voice cutting through the tension. "What's going on here?" The waiter paled as he realized who was standing before him. James didn't wait for an explanation. "Why is my mother standing here, being humiliated in my own restaurant?" The manager stammered, but James wasn't interested in excuses. He turned to the waiter. "You're fired. Leave immediately." The young man's face twisted in disbelief as the realization set in. He had lost his job because of his own prejudice. Without a word, he quickly left the restaurant. As the situation unfolded, customers who had been recording the event began sharing it online, and within minutes, it went viral. James addressed the room, his voice filled with emotion. "No one should ever have to experience this. My mother should never have been treated this way, and neither should anyone else. There's no place for discrimination here, or anywhere." The restaurant erupted in applause, and the support from the community was overwhelming. James vowed to implement immediate changes, starting with training his staff to ensure that everyone, regardless of race or background, would always feel welcome. That night, after the restaurant had emptied, Evelyn and James sat together, reflecting on the day. It had become more than just a birthday. It was a powerful reminder of the ongoing fight for justice and equality. Evelyn looked at her son with pride, knowing that together they had made a stand not just for themselves, but for everyone who had ever faced the sting of prejudice. The fight wasn't over, but that day, they had won an important battle.